I would like to thank you for being here and recognize the West Africans. I know they're a delegation from the Gambia. Welcome to the Gambians. Hello. Welcome to the Nigerians. Hey, Mr. Zulu. All right. Welcome to the Rwandans. One. Sénégalais. Bonjour. Voilà. Je sais que la délégation de Burkina a eu des problèmes à venir. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un du Burkina qui a pu prendre l'avion? Bravo, bienvenue. Okay, I would like to call on board my panelists. Let me start from my colleague, Finda Koroma. She doesn't remember me. We worked together 30 years ago. I've been just referred as an old colleague from another gentleman. So I will not do the same. I will say my young colleague. Welcome, Finda. Finda is a lawyer and she's a fantastic lady. She's now the vice president of ECOWAS. I'm sure under her leadership she will do great things. Please have a seat. Thank you. Let me call now Miss Aminata Kouyate from Guinea. Bienvenue. Bienvenue. Prenez place. And now look at the gender balance. We have two gentlemen coming on stage. So let me call Mr. Lamin Darboy from the Gambia, President of the Executive Council of Guinea. And last but not last, my friend Martin Burugabatwi from the Commonwealth Association of Young Entrepreneurs and the City Council of Kigali. Welcome. So I will use a few words to introduce myself. I worked in entrepreneurship since a number of years, but more importantly, I lead a program which is 30 years old, Empretech, and we are present in 40 countries around the world and 20 in Africa. So I'm sure there are some Empretechs in the room, and we work, hello, a lot of them. Welcome. And we also work on policy at the ANTAD. We are trying to promote entrepreneurship policy, but also youth entrepreneurship policy. We have established a partnership with the Commonwealth, and we just produced a new framework for youth entrepreneurship in the blue and green economy, which I will talk more to this afternoon in the marketplace. Also, we have done work on migration and how entrepreneurship can be a solution for particularly the youth migrant. But I'm here also to introduce, on behalf of the network, the Yes Declaration. The Yes Declaration has an hashtag, so I'll be looking at the tweets, and we also, with the colleagues at the ILO, we are receiving comments because this is your declaration. I mean, we have designed it to incorporate all the different commitments already taken at the level of the UN, but we want to be, this declaration to be owned by the West Africans, but also inspire other people, particularly young people in other countries in Africa and beyond to take action. So the declaration focuses on two aspects. The youth entrepreneurship, so how young people can become part of the solution, so become job creators instead of job seekers, and also pushing the condition for having decent jobs. And as the Ambassador of Spain mentioned this morning, decent jobs are the formal jobs that will give opportunities for social protection and a decent life to families, family incomes. The declaration follows quite closely the intention of the youth strategy released by the UN Secretariat. So I invite you to also study the declaration in the sense that it really empower the young people to be actors. We would like the young people to participate and to be part of the policy-making process. No regulation can be taken in the area of entrepreneurship, particularly for young people, without the young people at the table. I'm happy that this forum was opened by two leaders, young leaders that have taken a commitment for the social sustainable development goals. So this is important that you really look at it carefully, that you integrate your feedback, your comments, so that we can move ahead and have this as a call for action, but also as we hear today, focusing on implementation. We heard from Dorothy Tembo at the International Trade Center a commitment for implementation. So this is going to be a yes forum. We're going to say yes to everything, but we're also going to commit to do it, not just talk about it, right? And to introduce a little bit the commitments of the speakers, I will invite comments from each of them, but also I'll take questions from the audience at any point of time, and I'll be looking at the Twitter as well if there is any burning comments that we receive from the around the world. I know there is a network that has promised tweets from about 40 countries around the world. So I would like to start from the Guinea, because we have the chance to have Aminata with us, who's a policy maker and is involved in the Ministry of Youth. And so I would like to ask you, how is it going in the Guinea? What are the different strategies that you already adopted that could be a lesson learned, a model for other countries?
Thank you very much for the question. But I will go ahead with the French because I'm French speaker. Merci beaucoup pour cette invitation et merci pour la question. Effectivement, je suis la directrice nationale de l'emploi des jeunes en Guinée. Et la mission de cette direction, en fait, est de mettre en œuvre la politique du gouvernement dans la promotion de l'emploi décent et l'insertion des jeunes. Cela va sans dire que l'entrepreneuriat pour nous est une des réponses donc au chômage des jeunes, et c'est pour nous une des solutions qui permettent donc d'insérer de façon décente aux jeunes. Mais comme vous le conviendrez avec moi, et je suis heureuse de l'avoir entendu, c'est que c'est un défi qui nous interpelle tous. Ce n'est pas que pour les politiques, que pour le privé ou, je veux dire, les jeunes eux-mêmes. C'est un défi collectif dont chacun doit s'impliquer. Pour en revenir à la question de ce qui est du gouvernement guinéen, effectivement, il y a quelques années que nous avons pris conscience de cela. Nous ne pouvons plus insérer de façon systématique les jeunes, parce que dans le passé, c'était ce qui se passait, à savoir que dès que les jeunes sortaient de l'université, ils étaient insérés dans le secteur notamment public. Mais après quelques années, l'État n'était plus en mesure d'absorber ces jeunes. Donc on a un flot de plus en plus croissant de jeunes sur le marché du travail, à peu près 3500 jeunes tous les ans. Alors qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire? Il faut déjà, je pense, dans un premier temps, les rassurer et leur parler, parce que c'est pas évident pour un jeune qui sort de l'université ou alors qui est même en zone rurale de se dire ah oui, je vais devenir entrepreneur. Aujourd'hui on parle de l'entrepreneuriat comme de la solution, mais j'estime que cela aussi passe par un certain des steps qui doivent être franchis avant. Déjà, il faut que le jeune prenne conscience que l'entrepreneuriat est une solution pour lui. Il faut qu'il ait envie d'entreprendre, et pour cela, maintenant, il faut qu'il ait les politiques et les accompagnements nécessaires. Alors, ce que nous, on a eu à faire récemment par rapport à ça, c'est que déjà, on a mis en place ce qu'on a appelé le vendredi de l'entrepreneur. C'est vraiment une plateforme où tous les jeunes qui ont l'esprit entrepreneur, qui ont juste envie d'avoir des informations sur qu'est-ce qu'ils vont faire pour s'insérer et avoir un travail décent, peuvent venir pour s'informer, pour poser des questions, pour être accompagnés, pour être coachés et pour pouvoir avoir un accompagnement. À côté de ça aussi, une fois que vous savez ce que vous devez faire et que vous avez effectivement un plan d'affaires ou alors vous avez une idée d'entreprise bien mûre, il faut maintenant pouvoir mettre cela en pratique, à savoir où est-ce que vous allez trouver les financements, d'où aussi un autre problème qui est l'accès au financement que nous avons aussi adressé dernièrement, en surtout essayant de créer des partenariats avec les IMF et surtout aussi avec les banques, et on a une expérience que je peux qualifier de réussie, ou avec une banque de la place. avec effectivement des fonds de garantie mis en place par le gouvernement guinéen au plus haut niveau, nous avons pu accompagner des jeunes entreprises porteurs de projets. À savoir que c'était des prêts, mais sous forme de crédit revolving. Et ça aussi, ça demande une éducation financière. Parce que malheureusement, très souvent, quand c'est l'État qui met les moyens à disposition, les jeunes se disent « Ah, c'est l'argent du gouvernement, on n'a pas à le rembourser ». Donc c'est ce qu'on a résumé en parlant de parcours d'intégration du jeune, où il y a besoin d'un savoir, d'un savoir-faire, d'une formation financière et d'un accompagnement.
Merci Aminata pour cette... Merci Aminata pour cette bonne introduction à ce que le gouvernement de Guinée a fait. Et je voulais vous demander, nous parlons beaucoup d'égalité des femmes. Et dernièrement, j'ai lu un rapport qui m'a fait beaucoup peur et qui a été publié par le Forum économique international. Le rapport mondial dit que les femmes devraient attendre 217 années avant d'avoir la parité de salaire. Donc, nous, on n'est pas prêts à attendre 217 ans. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour que ça se passe ici et maintenant? Qu'est-ce que vous faites en Guinée pour qu'on ait une parité, une véritable parité à parité de travail égal, salaire égal? C'est vrai, les filles?
Okay. Donc, j'estime qu'en Guinée ou même partout ailleurs, c'est en fait l'égalité de chance. Et l'égalité de chance passe aussi par la formation et par les compétences. On ne peut pas juste dire parce que je suis une femme, je dois gagner autant ou je dois gagner moins. Moi, je pense que c'est la compétence qui vraiment permet aux femmes de se positionner et de revendiquer ce droit-là. Et aujourd'hui, les jeunes filles aussi, on les incite justement à se prendre en charge, à avoir déjà confiance en eux. Parce que c'est vrai qu'on est aussi dans des sociétés, il faut le dire, où le rôle de la femme n'est pas toujours valorisé. La femme n'est perçue que comme mère, épouse à la maison. Donc il y a aussi un changement de mentalité qu'il faut. Et ça, c'est déjà dès l'environnement scolaire et aussi au niveau des familles. Parce que quand vous allez voir, vous faites de la sensibilisation, de l'information et que vous montrez aux jeunes mamans que c'est tout aussi important pour elles de donner les mêmes chances à leurs jeunes filles, je pense que ça augmente ses chances de pouvoir réduire ce gap.
D'accord, mais au niveau des politiques, et au niveau des règlements du secteur privé, vous avez prévu des contrôles ou des mécanismes pour assurer que les femmes reçoivent un travail égal, un salaire égal?
Oui, je pense qu'en fait c'est prévu, mais maintenant c'est qu'il faut que dans la réalité cela soit implémenté. C'est vrai que chaque fois qu'on met en place des politiques, des projets, on dit qu'il faut un certain pourcentage de jeunes femmes, et d'ailleurs on l'impose. Mais c'est vrai qu'au niveau des politiques aussi, on fait en sorte que cela soit une réalité, pas seulement dans les discours. Et c'est vrai que ça passe par des contrôles, ça passe justement par le fait de dire que ce projet ne sera financé que si le nombre de jeunes femmes qui est requis est effectivement prise en compte. Et ça, c'est devenu quelque chose, comme on dit, de classique et qui se fait régulièrement maintenant dans tous les projets et dans tout ce qu'on met en place au niveau du gouvernement et même du secteur privé.
Alors, merci pour cet engagement. Vous savez qu'on célèbre la Semaine mondiale de l'entrepreneuriat et que cette année, on a des initiatives pour les femmes. D'ailleurs, il y a un hashtag JevWomen. Et je vous invite à donner vos commentaires sur l'Internet pour donner plus d'informations aux femmes et aussi de reconnaissance si vous avez des initiatives qui sont importantes en Afrique à ce moment pour donner cette confiance aux jeunes femmes. C'est bien de partager et donc d'avancer dans ce domaine. Donc merci beaucoup Aminata et on va continuer la conversation avec Lamine. Lamine?
Yes.
Lamine shifted to English so we can have a conversation. You're coming from the Gambia and you're Executive Director of the National Youth Council. The Gambia is a small country nearby. I know the road has been tough to come here, so we hope that infrastructure will improve. We're waiting for this famous bridge to be finished so the connectivity will be improved. The Gambia, although it's a small country, has an incredible cultural diversity. We know that the youth condition in the Gambia is a difficult one. There is high unemployment, I think more than what the official statistics will show. And there is also a very important rural and urban gap. Can you comment on this, and how do you believe that entrepreneurship education can change this situation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Like you rightly mentioned, I'm sure most of us are aware of the difficult situation Gambia just emerged from, which has to do with some, we call it dictatorship and tyranny, which of course our young people had also suffered from as victims. But in addition to the context you gave, I would also add that Gambia is one of the smallest countries on mainland Africa, but has a high population density with about but the population size is small. The density is high, but it's a small population of about or less than 2 million people. According to the Labour Force Survey 2012 in the Gambia, the national unemployment rate is at 29%. But almost 10 points higher than that, you have the youth unemployment at about 38%. And this is, for us, this is a huge number in terms of our youthful population and how that impacts our national development. But again, the same unemployment, the political situations all come together. We also say that Gambia is currently one of the highest net exporters of youth irregular migrants. I would say that Gambia is only next to Nigeria and Somalia among the net arrivals in Europe through the irregular migration rates. And this is a concern and quite alarming and very disturbing for not only the country of origin but also the host countries. So, looking at our situation from a very hostile political environment with the limited opportunities, the infrastructures are not well developed, and of course you also look at the social systems being broken, unemployment on the increase, pose a challenge to not only the development of young people, but the overall national development. So I must say that when it comes to the creation of decent jobs, there is no better time for the country to pick up and be able to run with it, so that to restore the hope and ensure that young people continue to be the pace setters to develop their country. And of course, I must say that entrepreneurship is one cardinal tool that definitely we can work to ensure that we provide this service. For example, in the Gambia, we have the Empretech project. The Empretech under the GAIPA, under the Ministry of Trade, works to ensure that young people are provided not only the entrepreneurial skills, but they are also provided mentoring. And this opportunity provides young people the mechanism to learn among themselves, but also to be able to implement the skills and attitudes and that they learn in the ETW classes that they have. But also we have other entrepreneurship programs like the Youth Empowerment Project that is working with the different entrepreneurship service providers, the Startup Incubator, the National Enterprise Development Initiative, and you name them. And these are all opportunities that are available. So for me, in my advocacy, I tell young people, with our current situation, even if government provides an office in every compound, obviously it's going to be difficult for every young person in our country to have a job. So the solution will be, how do we equip these young people with the necessary skills, attitudes and tools and finances as entrepreneurs to move away from not only seeking jobs, to create jobs for themselves, but also jobs for other people. I think that has a catalytic effect on not only the economy, but also to sustain the transition, the democratic transition, and peaceful coexistence. Thank you.
Thank you, Lamin. With lack of resources and lack of ability to fully engage the new institution, the new government into implementation, how can you think the youth association, the youth in the Gambia can become an actor in this implementation and leverage their weight for the government to take action in implementing the entrepreneurship strategy?
Thank you very much. The entrepreneurship policy, I think, is suffering from similar predicament of many policies in the country. That there are policies formulated for youth, but they are not implemented as expected, or they suffer from implementation challenge due to one reason or the other. But like you rightly mentioned, in the Gambia we have over 70% of our population under 35 years of age. So that population should be at the center, can be a catalyst, can also enable, to ensure that the entrepreneurship policy is implemented as expected. But it does not mean that they are supposed, these young people are only supposed to be like beneficiaries of the entrepreneurship policy implementation. These young people must be seen as partners, as people who have the skills, the competence to drive this process. And beyond the entrepreneurship process, all other process that it has, like that it is connected to the youth policy, but also the employment policy and all other policies that are connected to the entrepreneurship policy. But there is definitely a challenge in terms of resourcing the implementation of the policy, but also for young entrepreneurs themselves to access resources. The only open resource that we have in the country was the Yet Mini grant that young people were accessing, and beyond that now the mini loan scheme. But if you look at the percentage of young people, I'm saying we're talking about over 70% of the population under 35, it's like a drop in an ocean. There is more that these young people need. There is more that must be done to ensure that these young people are able to get the skills, but also get the finance to implement their innovation and ideas. In the Gambia, again, in our advocacy, we say that the young people have the number, but beyond the number, they are the generation fortunate enough to be in mass education, that they are functional literates. And beyond being functional literates, they are also the generation that is fortunate to be tech savvy. So we need to capitalize and build synergy and build on this competence of our time and generation to allow young people to be able to provide the leadership, but also to allow young people to ensure that they are able to unleash their creativity and innovation to bring about jobs, but also to ensure that the value chain in agriculture, in ICT, in tourism, and even in the other service sectors are able to deliver the goods that will take Gambia to the next level.
Yeah, Lamin, you mentioned a key word, value creation, and value-added activities. So I think it's a very interesting way to move the young generation to the next level. So what is about the thinking of the audience? We have people from Guinea, people from the Gambia. Would you like to ask a question? Would you like to take the advantage of participating to the debate? I'm taking question now. Can you please introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Lansana Mohamed Umbuya, coming from Sierra Leone. I want to ask a question around assets and finance. An example, in Sierra Leone, the interest rates are very, very more high. It's about 20% on the loans that are taken from the banks. And most of the banks are asking for collateral securities, which the youth cannot really have at that moment. So working around the policy space, how do we change this situation? Because most of the banks that are giving out loans in Sierra Leone are not owned by Sierra Leoneans, they are foreigners. So how do we work around this policy space to enhance access for funds to the youths particularly?
Is there any other question before we respond to this one? Down there.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tombo Kalvincha from Cameroon. I represent Young Farmers Cooperative Boya and the Regional Multipurpose Youth Empowerment Center Boya, Cameroon. In my country, Cameroon, we have difficulties, especially the youth. There is an image of the youth not being trusted. as one of the panelists rightly said, it's to say if you give a youth money to start something, he takes the money immediately and gets into drinking or traveling abroad. I wish to know how we can change this piece. Thank you.
Okay, I will use the power of moderator to call Emanuele Santi, who spent many years at the African Development Bank, to answer the question on financing, because he has something to say. I'm sure financial institutions are asking.
So when the banks,
Yeah.
banks are foreign, they are not local.
Yeah. I mean, it's a $1 million question. So I wish I had an easy answer here. The good news that there are a lot of new funding mechanisms out there that are looking at financing in different ways. But it is true that a lot of the financial systems is still very much outdated. One of the things that I've seen very successfully, and I think it was echoed in some other ways, is initiatives where banks join forces with other players to basically de-risk interventions. I can list a number of programs that I've seen in which banks have been involved in the early stage of a selection process, and oftentimes combining the financial and non-financial services. The issue is that I'm actually spoiling my intervention for later, is that the whole support community, including international organizations like the one that I used to work in, and many also around the table, they still tend to have a lot of their own programs, and they're very much guided by their own ideas, by their own principles, and I think some of them are moving towards more coordinated approaches. I think it's time for us as a development community to really behave as an ecosystem, and it's very rare to see programs out there. Banks do their jobs on their own, international organizations do their jobs on their own, donors do their job on their own. Everyone likes to have this little startup competition, everyone likes to have its own logo and things. And I think if we really want to address particularly the access to finance challenge, which is actually the one that is most difficult to achieve, it's time for us to come together with the financial intermediaries, understanding where their concerns are, because they do have very stringent concerns that oftentimes donor community do not have. And so that's. I mean, I know it's not an easy answer. I wish I had an easy one, but it is a call for action. And I think it reflects on the panel to really come together and work more in partnerships.
Fairly large, well-funded program that was devoted to youth to give access to finance, and they had grants. So all of them, they bought a car, and obviously the car didn't solve the problem. So we came in and devised a new mechanism where the grant was given together with skill development. So they understood that if they wanted to start a business, the car was not the key asset. I mean, it's nice to have the car, but unless you want to use it for work, it's not going to bring solution. And obviously, I understand that when you are deprived and finally you have some money, a dream has to come true. So we were finding a way of making them understand that you can get a car when you are more settled, in making a living. And so that works. Combining a grant with skill development really works. And I also like to answer the question to the collateral. There are certain countries that are really finding some innovative solution. In South Africa, the banks look at the psychological profile as part of the assessment, of the risk assessment. In Argentina, very recently, it's another part of the world, but it's good to know, one bank has decided to assess the young people according to their grades in school. So if they completed a diploma, if they are good students, that means something. And this provides also a good motivation for the young people that think, oh, I'm studying, but my diploma means nothing, because there is no value in the market. often the diploma is not appreciated. But if the bank trusts a good student, I think we are making a step forward, giving a right motivation to people to complete their studies and learn, and at the same time getting the funding that if they have a good idea and they have a good project, this should get access to funding. I'd like to hear from Finda about this important issue, because I'm sure she has things to share.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. She's just reminded me about how old we are. 30 years ago, we worked together at UNCTC, then ONTAD. ECOWAS is pleased to be here. Let me just put it in context. It's, hello? Yeah. 15 member states, a combined population of 300 million, growing at a rate of 3%. 11 out of the 15 member countries are amongst the poorest. A region that is very troubled in some parts, as it is very wealthy, with the likes of Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire, that are really showing a double-digit growth now. But at the same time, political crisis. Lamine just mentioned the Gambia, where we have a stabilization force, Guinea-Bissau, which is also very troubled, and very fragile economies like Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, who are post-Ebola economies. So what does that mean for youth employment and youth opportunities? ECOWAS has so many laws and policies and regulations, but it's interesting to know that member states have to domesticate any regional policy or action plan we come up with. Okay, so we have this ECOWAS Employment Action Plan, and our role is to complement what the member states are doing, to fill in the gaps, and then to also advocate for employment opportunities for the youth. And you see this across in several of the programs we do in several sectors. For example, the agricultural sector is looking at focusing on farming for the youth in the rural areas to stem exactly what Lamine has said about the rural-urban migration, and then also looking at it from the point of view of ensuring that it also puts to a halt illegal migration, which not only Gambia suffers from, but you also have Cote d'Ivoire, and you have the northern parts of Mali and Niger, which are corridors to Libya. We have in the entrepreneurship department the Small Business Enterprise Charter. They also organize a lot of fora, which allows opportunities for young people, especially when we have our trade fair, or we have joint. We just recently completed a trade fair with India. The India Chamber of Commerce was in Nigeria to do an ECOWAS investment forum, and a lot of the youth entrepreneurs were also present. But there is light at the end of the tunnel for post-conflict countries and countries that have fragile economies. We've just concluded a recent regional stabilization fund. We're going to launch it in the Gambia. So we will look at the value chains in the Gambia, especially near fisheries, horticulture. Lamine is smiling because I braved it to a very poor region in the Gambia called Basse. We believe that, you know, at the end of every political crisis, we have to come in and look at opportunities for the youth. So Gambia is going to benefit from almost 10 million euros funding from KFW and ECOWAS, with additional vocational training support from GIZ as well. And we will also be doing the same thing in Guinea-Bissau. For the fragile economies, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, exactly what the gentleman, my home country is Sierra Leone, and we're also going to be looking at guarantees, because his question is pertinent. The banks do not see the youth as people who are able to pay back their loans, unfortunately. But as Fiorina said, it's an issue of trust and confidence. So we're saying to the banks, well, could we look at guarantees? Could you look at crowdfunding, as the gentleman from the ADB is looking at? So in looking at fragile economies, one of the things that the fund will do is to look at ways in which we can improve access to financing for the youth. But there are several startup funding coming up, a lot of innovation funding, that are coming up for bright young people. Tony Elemelu is a partner of ECOWAS, and they have been funding quite a lot of startup activities there. ECOWAS itself is going to be doing a pilot project in, I think, Senegal, Burkina Faso, and in Nigeria, in which it's going to just experiment with youth entrepreneurship. It would be a 30% grant, 60% would be a revolving credit, and 10% would test this guarantee fund as we see it. So, you know, we're looking at several opportunities. Remember that the countries are represented in ministerial council meetings, in technical meetings, in the area of ECOWAS's trade liberalization scheme, for example. We're looking at a free trade area where youth enterprises can benefit from, you know, free trade. We look at our protocol on free movement and the right of establishment. I'll tell you one intervention we did recently. I'm sure you heard that in Ghana, they were closing the shops of a lot of the SMEs from Nigeria. We intervened very quickly, and they were able to reopen the shops, because remember, a lot of the street hawkers in our region are the youth. So that was a major, major problem, and it reached a point where ECOWAS was on the verge of imposing sanctions, because we do have the ability to do so. So these are some of the thoughts we have, you know, on the way forward for the youth. But I'm totally inspired by the recent words of President Adesina, who said that a bird cannot really fly with one wing. The youth need help. We need to accompany them. And for me, that is the most inspirational part of it. And I want to assure you that ECOWAS is there to be with you, not only the West African youth, but also youth from other regions, to share examples and lead by example. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your inspiring word. You come from a position of leadership in a regional organization. How are you going to link up with other initiatives? For example, we have a larger delegation from Nepal, which I welcome here in the audience. And also, thank you for sponsoring some of the participants as well. And we also are very excited, particularly me working in a trade organization of the Continental African Free Trade Agreement, which our Secretary General, Dr. Kitui, has been championing. So how are you going to work with these other initiatives, and how are you going to link up and you know, take action together?
Okay, well, let's start off first with the African Continental Free Trade. Now, even though it's a single market, we're looking at 1.3 billion people, the youth are not going to be able at this stage, not all of them, Rwanda, yes, Kenya and others, but for the West African youth, not all of them may be able to begin to export. One thing you should look at is what role you can play along the value chain for larger companies that will be exporting and benefiting from these tax-free importation. So that's what you should focus on. For countries like Rwanda and others that are way ahead, you have a huge opportunity. But as I said, for the smaller countries in West Africa, look at the value chain, which we are building tremendously. I look forward to an opportunity to working with UNCTAD in looking at a study on how we could really jumpstart that youth entrepreneurship, not only amongst the African Free Continental Trade area, but also within our trade liberalization area, because that is one thing I think the ECOWAS youth have to benefit from. NEPAD has been a huge partner of ECOWAS. We are doing a business incubator in Burkina Faso, and I think the next one is in Sierra Leone, which is about to be started. And we have both a gender center and a youth center at ECOWAS that are also doing a lot of entrepreneurship projects. So, you know, the sky is the limit for us. We're looking at partnerships. We're in negotiations with the ILO to look at ways in which we would collaborate in West Africa in the Gambia project, your stabilization fund, but also, as I said to my very good friend Dennis, in Guinea-Bissau. Because remember, because we have peacekeeping troops in both the Gambia and Guinea-Bissau, we cannot look at the Gambia and then leave out Guinea-Bissau. Same thing for post-Ebola economies like Sierra Leone, Guinea and Liberia. Thank you.
Thank you, Finda. Let me go to East Africa and welcome Martin. Martin, you come from one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. Was declared second best place to do business in Africa, second only to Mauritius. Are you going to take the first place?
Thank you very much, Fiorina, for the opportunity to be on this panel. I think before I talk about what we do at Dakar, we need to talk about what are we doing in Rwanda to solve the issue of unemployment, youth unemployment. And there's a question that was asked about the collateral and the access to finance. Those are the big challenges that most of the youth in Africa are facing. Most of the challenges are common in African countries, but the way of how we handle or we solve the problems may be different approaches. Regarding the youth unemployment in Rwanda, it is still at high rate because we are at about 18%. That's a big number. But through national youth councils, through national youth associations, we advocate for policy reforms such that youth can get employed and we can have the policies that help younger people to create their own jobs. For example, the government in its commitment commits to have 200,000 youth every year. That means in a mandate of 7 years of the president, we have to create at least 1.4 million jobs for the youth. You know, according to ILO, we know the youth unemployment is a great concern for all African countries. So that's why we need to take the youthful population of Africa as an opportunity other than the challenges for the politicians. You know, some politicians in Africa, they use youth for demonstrations, for their political ambitions. But how are we going to turn that into how the governments can help young people to get employed? That's a big challenge that we need to address as African younger people ourselves. We engage in the governments to make sure the policies are reformed such that they can get access to finance and markets. In Rwanda, to solve the problem of access to finance and guarantees for the banks for these projects, the government has set up a national fund called the Business Development Fund, and it collaborates with commercial banks. Whenever a young person has a bankable project and the bank approves it, and the problem is collateral, that fund is going to stand on behalf of the younger people such that the project can be financed. And in the case of anything, that Business Development Fund is going to be responsible for the collateral. And for sure, it has been doing a lot, and young people have been benefiting from it, including young men and women. So that's a very good thing. But also, we still have a problem that we are still advocating for. Young people, they fear to go into banks because we still have high interest rates. How are we going to advocate for that? For example, if you start a project and you have to pay interest of 21%, that's a lot. So that's also what we are engaging with the government to make sure that the banks can reduce on the interest rates so that young people can access the finances from the banks for their projects. Another thing that we are doing for the young people in Rwanda is like we have RDB, is a Rwanda Development Board, an agency for the government. We say that if a younger person is starting a business, how can we have a tax holiday for starting businesses? Because if you start a business today, and before the year ends you have to pay taxes, that means we end up collapsing the businesses. So we need to have a program and a process where at least young people a younger person is starting a business, at least he starts paying the taxes after you see that the business is growing. So through those, we have many mechanisms to help young people, and I think if we replicate it in the other countries, West African countries, other countries, it's very good. I think that's what you can share. Regarding when you have many testimonies, but time is not on our side.
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit on the role of Rwanda Development Board, who actually had as the first CEO another colleague, John Gara, who was heading the Rwanda Development Board. So can you spend a little bit of time explaining, because it's one of the few agencies that has investment, promotion, enterprise, and tourism development together. The Rwanda Development Board also manages the park and works with the community. So it's a quite unique agency in Africa. Can you explain a little bit how it works?
So Rwanda Development Board was established from different government institutions that were doing all the same businesses, the same activities, but in different ways. We had what we call export promotion agents. We had employment agents, we had licensing agents, so all those organizations, they had how their works are interconnected and related. So the government decided to have a one-stop center agency for import, export promotion, business development, and helping investors to come and invest in Rwanda. Selling the image of the country across the world, promoting the tourism in Rwanda, such that you can have a one-stop center for all those activities without going into different agencies and organizations. So now it is working very well. The tourism, tourists are increasing, exports are being promoted, young people are being helped for employment, and so many things. So in short, I can see the moderators are telling you the time is going. I don't want to go into details, but during the break sessions, we're going to have one-on-one discussions about that.
Yeah. Martin, can you also say a few words on your role with the Commonwealth Young Entrepreneurs? I know you are outgoing chair, but what has been your legacy?
Thank you very much. The Commonwealth Alliance of Young Entrepreneurs, I can say one of the speakers here said, policies, reforms, good papers, but implementation. How are we implementing what we have in our papers? So the good thing is, or the good news is, Commonwealth Alliance of Young Entrepreneurs is an association of young entrepreneurs themselves. So as young entrepreneurs, we made an association such that we can contribute for sustainable economic growth and the social development of our organizations. So as young entrepreneurs, we connect to each other, we build the capacity of young entrepreneurs, and also we act as a unifying voice such that we can influence policies and enhance trade among the youth. And also we need to inspire as young people. You know, young people, they fear to go into businesses. After I finish school, you may find somebody is spending like 4 years, 5 years, finding for a job. So say, why can't you start a business? Start it small, it will grow. So as young entrepreneurs, we are working as an inspiration for other entrepreneurs such that they can start their own businesses. That's part of what we do. We also advocate for policy reforms. For example, we all know that our teaching curriculum, our teaching programs is not reflecting, is not teaching people to be entrepreneurs. We normally teach people to go and search for jobs. So how can we change our teaching curriculum such that it can help younger people to create employment? How are we involving the private sector, people who are in the business, in designing our curriculum for secondary schools and universities? I think if we link the people in the academic sector, people in the private sector, they can work together so that they design the curriculum that are going to help people to be entrepreneurs instead of going to graduate and go in the streets for searching for jobs. The good thing also with the Commonwealth Alliance of Young Entrepreneurs is networking. In doing business, you have to network. For example, we have a network of young entrepreneurs of Asia. So we have a network of young entrepreneurs in East Africa. We have a network of young entrepreneurs in West Africa for Commonwealth countries. So if I want to do business in West Africa, I know I have contacts in Ghana. I know I have contacts in other Commonwealth countries in Asia. If I go to China, I know I have a contact person. If I go to Kenya, people are working together. So we have been working as a networking tool for businesses. If I want to do business in another country, that means I have a contact person who is going to give me information, and also we collaborate together. We also provide the younger people with external partnerships. For example, the voices of younger people are being heard through these kind of associations. Now the Commonwealth Alliance of Young Entrepreneurs is represented in Ichogam. When the heads of government are sitting for Commonwealth countries, younger people, young entrepreneurs are represented. I thank also UNCTAD for the World Investment Forum. They have youth entrepreneurs represented in the World Investment Forum. So they network, they connect to other business leaders around the world. So I don't know in ECOWAS, do people, younger people have a voice in your summits when the heads of state sit? Do they have a voice to talk to the presidents? So that's how this kind of associations are going to influence the policies and they make reforms that reflect for younger people's entrepreneurial culture. Another thing that we have to do that, we have set up the national associations in each country. So if you have one voice that is going to be speaking on behalf of young entrepreneurs, I know the policymakers will hear. But if you speak alone, you can't. So every country now, we are setting up a national association, an umbrella of young entrepreneurs that is going to be working with the regional alliances of young entrepreneurs. So we have many things to share, but before I conclude,
so I'm afraid we need to close because we've been running over time, and I'm really sorry. We can, continue sharing. We'll be in the marketplace in the afternoon, and we will be interacting with the audience. And apologize for running over time. So thank you so much, and see you in the other sessions.